Without further ado, I want to introduce today's speaker, who is actually my previous colleague. I used to work here at the Graduate College Career Development Office. But we have with us today Derek Attig, who is the Assistant Director for Graduate College Career Development Office. And he's going to talk to you today about translating your skills. So let's give him a warm welcome.
Okay, thank you, Jenny. Let's dive right in. We're going to today talk about translating skills, and in particular about identifying and talking about non-technical skills, right? Collaboration, communication, etc. By the way, if anybody can't hear me in the background, whenever I use a hand mic, it tends to migrate away from my face. So just wave at me if you can't hear me in the back. So our goal today is that you'll learn why developing a broad range of skills in your internship and beyond, why that's important, and then how to talk about those non-technical skills to employers. People often find that a little bit tricky, right? You can say pretty concretely your level of skill with C++, but how do you talk about what you've done and what skills you have with something like collaboration? Okay, so I'm going to start briefly with a kind of basic question, but one I think is worth spending a couple of minutes on, which is what is a skill? And so one thing that's really, really important is a skill isn't just something you know, it's something you know how to do with your knowledge. Right? You're able to do something with what you know. It's not just flat what you know. Also, a skill produces something, right? And that can be something kind of tangible and technical. You know, it can be a program or a model, right? But it can also be a really functional team, right? An effective explanation of something, a training. Also, a skill, often get in the habit, I think, of talking about skills as things we are good at or bad at, and that's the end of the story. Right? But really a skill is something that you can develop, and that does develop over time through experience. Right? It's not just something you're good at or you're bad at. In particular, you sometimes hear people say, oh, I'm bad at writing, and they just kind of leave it at that and walk away and focus on things. Also, a skill can be a hard skill or a soft skill, and you'll note the scare quotes around those words, and I want you to interpret them very aggressively on my part. I think it's not useful. It's not a useful way of talking about skills, but it's a common one. So skills can be technical, is maybe a better way to think about it, or they can be interpersonal, they can be communication related, they can be collaborative, they can be related to problem solving. Right? And both are really important. And they're important, one, because they're useful for living a functional life in the world, but they're also useful for our purposes today because those skills, soft skills, non-technical skills, are ones that employers really, really value. So these are the results of a survey of recruiters asking them to rate the importance of different qualities in applicants. And I'll read you some of the top ones there. Ability to verbally communicate with persons inside and outside the organization. Ability to work in a team structure. Ability to make decisions and solve problems. Ability to plan, organize, and prioritize work. Ability to obtain and process information. Jump down here. Ability to create and or edit written reports. And ability to sell or influence others. And so those are all the ones marked with the yellow arrows, which are all non-technical skills that employers say are really, really important. And when I talk to employers, when I talk to people who do hiring, they really emphasize that technical skills are not enough. Because, for a variety of reasons, but why do non-technical skills matter to employers? One is that it's actually really hard to teach. You can train someone how to use a piece of software pretty easily, but how do you train someone how to work well in a team? Right? You can, right? But it takes a long time, and it's not very easy. Right? So employers aren't really interested in investing that time and effort. Also, if they want their teams to work well together, and almost all work involves collaboration, involves working in teams, the employer needs people who can function in that setting, right? Or else people will just be getting in the way of the work of the company. And so hiring for critical thinking, for effective decision making, especially for adaptability, right, and communication, is an investment in the future, right? Because technical skills change, right? Software languages, programming languages change, right? But if you want to keep your employees and have your employees be able to adapt, they need to have those non-technical skills. Right? So that's why they care. So what I want you to do is on your table or on your chair, there's a packet. On that first page is a handout called What Skills Do You Have? Right? And if you have a pen, you can actually work through it, write it. If not, you can just promise me you'll think really hard about each of the questions. But I'm going to give you maybe 3 or 4 minutes to work through that, and I'm going to move pretty quickly and just kind of dump from your brain onto the page. This is an opportunity for you to think about and start to identify the skills that you've already developed. So just that first page. Haven't gotten to the third question on that sheet, maybe jump down there, start brainstorming some non-technical skills. Okay, let's come back together. You can keep feeding things into this worksheet as you go along. In fact, I recommend it, but is anybody willing to shout out one of their non-technical skills that they identify? Yeah. So ability to communicate and build long-lasting relationships with employers, I think that's a great example because we often just kind of talk about communication in vague terms, right? But that narrows it down a little bit more specifically, right? Communicate and build lasting relationships, right? Which you might actually think of as distinct from the skill that lets you build kind of quick, effective to connect with somebody immediately, kind of one-on-one versus build and nurture a relationship over time. Those are two related but distinct skills. Anyone else want to share one? Yeah.
Emotional intelligence.
Emotional intelligence. Can you talk a little bit about what you mean there?
So basically being able to understand people, their emotions, why they feel the type of way, what caused them to feel that way. It really helps with communication because you know how somebody is feeling and you know your approach.
Absolutely. So the ability to understand what people are feeling, I think we can even break that down, right? So the ability to just understand that somebody is feeling something and identify what that is a skill, right? And then to be able to think through, what might be the causes there, right? And then the ability to frame communication, to speak with them, to connect with them based on that information, right? Based on knowing what they're feeling and what the situation might be. I think that's a fantastic one. Okay, so that's great. You can start cataloging skills in a really general sense, but as I said, I want us to start thinking about how you actually use these in a work setting, and importantly, how do you convince an employer that you can use them in that kind of setting. So we're going to start connecting dots between the skills you have and the skills employers want, and we're going to do that in our session today by digging into a particular job ad. And so on page 2 of your packet is a job ad for an associate consultant position at Achieve Mission, which is a consulting firm that works primarily with nonprofits to help them run more effectively, more efficiently. So what I'd like to do is read that job ad with an eye toward identifying what kinds of skills Achieve Mission wants. Just another 30 seconds, minute on that. Okay, so what skills does a chief mission want their associate consultant to have?
Well, first, starting off, you have the ability to work in diverse teams.
Yeah, so the ability to work in a diverse team, right? You can kind of maybe break that down a little bit too, right? In pieces like you were doing with your non-technical skills, right? But the ability to operate effectively in diverse environments and the ability to work well in a team, right? Are there other kinds of collaboration they want?
Yes. Well, especially relates to the whole communication thing you look at different levels, whether it be through technical, non-technical, social, professional.
Absolutely. Yeah, so the ability to communicate around different topics, right? So the ability to communicate findings from a quantitative analysis of data, but also to connect with people on a more personal level. And also highlight, to go back here, the ability to verbally communicate with persons inside and outside the organization, right? That's another distinction, that they want somebody who can work well with a team of colleagues and well with clients, groups of clients. What else do they want? What does somebody have to be good at in order to succeed in this job? Yeah.
One of the points said that was comfortable taking initiative.
Yeah. Yeah. So being self-motivated, able to follow projects through, take some initiative. We might then connect that a little bit, draw a line between that and some of the project management skills. Right? I think they talk about juggling concurrent engagements and multiple deadlines, right? Doing lots of different things at the same time, right? Which involves being able to manage your own time and motivate yourself. Okay. Anything else? Yeah.
Critical and analytical skills.
Yeah, so analytical skills, right? So the ability to actually analyze data of different kinds, right? And probably need to be able to synthesize different kinds of data in order to communicate effectively action steps from that information. Okay. There's other stuff in there too. My favorite in this ad is the very last bullet, where humility is a skill they value, and hunger. And I also want to point out that we were pulling things, you guys identified skills they want, not just from the qualification section. When you're reading a job ad, don't just look at qualifications or required skills to find what skills they want. And sometimes you have to read between the lines. Look at what this person will be doing and infer what's going to be involved. Right? So kind of like I did with they want somebody who can analyze qualitative and quantitative, so you should probably be able to bring those together in order to make an argument, right? They don't say that explicitly, but it's likely to be something that they're really interested in. Okay, so this may not be a job you particularly want, right, some of you, but I chose it because it's really indicative of parts of most jobs, right? That this one wants a lot of the skills that are really necessary for a lot of different jobs, right? It includes a lot of the skills that we have in the employer survey. Right? So the next step I want you to do is to connect the dots between what a chief mission wants and your own skills. Right? So let's say you were sitting down to apply for this job. What skills do they want that you have? So on the third page, the connecting the dots worksheet bit, and I'll give you a few minutes to work on that. If you haven't gotten to the second question there, I'm going to get there, jot down some ideas. Okay, as before, you can continue thinking about this, adding to it if you'd like, but we'll stop there for right now. I'll say I think this is a really useful process for you to go through whenever you go to apply for a new job, and to make sure you're not just focusing on those really hyper-technical skills. Right? You want to make sure those line up roughly, right? But make sure to pull out some of their skills around communication, around collaboration, and then think about what skills do you have that line up there? What experiences have you had that gave you experience using those skills? But once you've done that, you've convinced yourself you have skills that this employer is looking for, the question is then, how do you convince them of that? Right? You need them to buy that you have these skills. And so we're going to spend our last few minutes talking about communicating about non-technical skills, particularly in the resume as one genre for doing that, but you'll also do it in an elevator pitch at a career fair or in an interview or just in a networking conversation you have with someone. So in order to translate your skills, to make them make sense to the employer, in many cases you're going to have to help them imagine how this context that you've used those skills in before relate to the context you would be using them in the job. So the first thing you have to do is visualize that, right? Imagine you're in this job, you're doing this work, you're using that skill. What does that look like? Right? What actions are the same? The actual stuff you're doing. Right? What's similar? What's different? Right? Also, you might want to think about shifting the language you use to describe it in order to fit what the employer uses. So a lot of the people I work with do a lot of teaching, right? But not too many employers in the industry are hiring people to teach, or at least they're not going to use that language. So it might make sense to use the language of training to talk about teaching, because that's just going to make more sense, right? Or a group assignment, right? Sounds very like that's a thing you do in a class, and I'm not hiring you to be a student. So try to think about talking about that in terms of collaboration. right? Or following protocols in a lab, right? You can talk about processes, which might make a little bit more sense. And also really crucially, being able to explain what you actually did, not assuming the employer is going to understand kind of shorthand or anything like that. Right? And quantifying where possible just helps give a reader or an audience a sense of what you actually did, what that looked like. So I wanted to walk briefly through one example. So at the top is a resume entry, like a lot of them. I've done hiring for IT support and for marketing interns, and I see a lot of resumes that look like that, where for some student leadership position, the bullets are organized fundraising, held meetings, ran club Facebook group, and trained successor. And that's fine. But if I'm hiring for a job and having to get through a pile of 50 resumes and, lunch is in 15 minutes and I don't want to waste my time and I'm moving really quickly, right? If I want to see what the skills are there, I'm having to do work, right? I'm having to think, like, okay, held meetings, that relates to this skill that I want. Essentially, you don't want to ask an employer to do more work in order to hire you. So you need to do some of that translation for them. Right? And so here's an example with roughly, it's I think one more line. You have managed year-long fundraising project involving coordinating diverse stakeholders, monitoring progress, and juggling competing deadlines. This is written with a chief mission in mind. Or build close relationships with colleagues, one-on-one, in groups, and online to facilitate collaboration and motivate increased performance. And develop knowledge base to set next year's officers up for success. Right? I think there are ways to, I wrote that in 5 minutes yesterday, so I would make changes where I actually use it, but you can see how much more this communicates, right? How denser it is with skills and how explicit those skills are. Right? So I want you to think about that when you're writing a resume, is think about your audience, how they understand the skills they're hiring for, the language they use, the contexts they're expecting, and then you need to explain what you've done in ways that are going to make really quick sense to them. So homework for you, think about, would be on the last page of the packet. There's a section that says resume bullet, and I urge you to go home and try to write a bullet on your resume describing your internship that highlights at least one skill that achieved mission goals. Right, so try actually doing this. Other things to think about are to practice, to do this more. Right? Look at lots of job ads, do this kind of connection, even when you're not actively looking for a job. Right? You can also try out an interview answer that highlights skills. If you were interviewed for a job, say at Achieve Mission, and they ask what particular strengths do you bring to this job, what would you say? Right? So practice that. The thing I want you to spend our last couple of minutes thinking about is where do you go from here? What other skills do you want? How do you want to expand your skill set? We've talked a lot about identifying the skills you have and then talking about them, but you're in a really great position in your internship this summer to develop your skills even more. So I want you to take a minute or two and under the expanding your skills heading, I want you to do some brainstorming about, well, first, what non-technical skills do you think you need to expand on? And then, are there things you can do in your internship, or in particular, I think it's useful to think about ways you can do things you're already doing. And it's not always about adding more things, it's about approaching your existing activities purposefully. How can you do your internship in ways that will help you develop those skills and give you more to talk about in your resume or an interview? So take a couple of minutes to think about that. So I will say from here, continue thinking about that question. How am I going to expand my skills? How can I do things that will develop me further? And then, really importantly, try to actually do them. It's easy to make a lot of plans and then completely forget about them. So you might schedule some time in a couple of weeks to check in with yourself on the progress you're making toward that goal of developing that skill this summer. Yes. Okay, so try out a resume bullet, practice an interview question, and figure out how you can continue to develop. Thank you. We're going to wrap up there so you have time to grab some more food and head back. Thank you.